Now, let's get down to earth. This week saw the marking of World Soil Day. The theme this year was Soils Where Food Begins. But it's not just farmers that have a responsibility for the soil. Let's speak now to Hoven Meyer from Nestlé Agriculture Services, East and Southern African region. Mr. Meyer, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Now, 95% of what is on our plates comes from the soil. Why is there a heightened need to focus on soil conservation?
I think what you just mentioned, that 95% is coming from that's on our plates, is coming from our soil, and that's the great importance of soil. And I think we're seeing over the years a big depletion of our soils, incorrect cultivation methods of our soils, erosion of our soils, and soil is so pivotal in our existence. And that's why we need to really revisit our soils, because soil is pivotal in our whole food generation process.
Now, we know that COP27 took place recently in Egypt. What were some of the concerns flagged around soil conservation at that conference?
Yeah, from the COP side, I mean, we all know it's driven by climate, our planet, climate change. But soil is, as I've already mentioned, so pivotal because soil and water and food production, so soil is releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere if it's not treated correctly. And that's what we want to see. We want to see the reverse of soil assisting with taking carbon dioxide from the air and build it into the soil as soil carbon.
So how then do we ensure that soil is resilient from these climate change impacts?
I think the whole strategy is regenerative agriculture, to drive regenerative agriculture. And regenerative agriculture's pillars are soil, water, biodiversity, and then contributing to climate change and creating a more resilient soil. Because there's certain interventions that we need to apply to our soils regarding the cultivation methods, sort of conventional methods that we've applied in the past, that we seriously have to change going forward and to save our soils, building soil carbon, having higher yields of our soil, and not just pumping it with chemical fertilizer.
Just speak to us about some of Nestlé's plans and projects that you've embarked on, both in Kenya with the Nescafé plan, as well as the Nestlé SR and Skimmelskrans Broedery in George, where there's a pilot project that took place in order to look to deliver what will be Africa's first net zero dairy farm. Just explain to us what that is, how it works, and how that will impact society.
Yeah, thank you, Gutlaho. I think it's, as we know, our soils are managed by our farmers. And that's so pivotal from our side as Nestlé that we drive and collaborate with our farmers in the whole process by building our farmers' capacity and also financially support our farmers on all the interventions to driving soil health, soil fertility. If we look at our Nescafé plan with our coffee farmers in Kenya, that is based on training, improve plantlets and interventions that drive soil carbon with intercropping and don't leave soil just barren there, water activities, and driving livelihoods of communities in our Africa continent. And that all is part and parcel of our Nescafé plan. On the other hand, on our net zero commitments, as you would know, that we as Nestlé, we've got a global commitment set for 2025 to reduce our carbon footprint, and then followed by 2030 and net zero by 2050. So we've started 2 years back with a net zero dairy farm in South Africa. We want to drive this farm to a net zero position within a 3-year project. So obviously there we've started off with looking what's the baseline, what's the footprint of the farm, and then applying different interventions that varies from renewable energy, manure management, organic fertilizer, multi-species pastures to drive our footprint down, and then ultimately sequestrate carbon dioxide from the air via photosynthesis of our increased plant population on the farm.
So should this farm project, the pilot project, be a success, would you then be looking to expand it to other farms?
Yes, for sure. So we've already started off by these interventions. We've got the proof of concept. We've already rolled it out to all our other farms, in this case dairy farms. The same interventions with the same financial support that we apply, and then to drive this to a positive climate footprint. A net zero project, we can mention one of our, which is actually our biggest emerging dairy farm in South Africa at the foothills of the Maluti Mountains in KZN. There we, with a farm with 10,000 hectares and 14,000 families implicated in the Makoba Trust, there we've applied the regenerative agricultural principles with great success thus far by just applying all our regenerative interventions on that farm as well. And we already see increased production in milk. We've seen increased yield production of pastures. And as I mentioned earlier, the sustainability is not only about our climate, it must also be economical sustainable for the farmer to continue with all these processes.
Most certainly. So whose responsibility is it to ensure that we conserve our soil, and should it be the responsibility of all people living in this country and on this planet? What advice would you have for people in terms of the everyday things that they do in order for us to be able to conserve our soil?
I think it's all of us want to continue have a prosperous existence on this planet. So it's for each and every one of us. From the corporate side, from us as Nestlé, we've got the strategy to source directly from the farm and have upstream commitment. So that's why we want to be involved on the farm itself, with the families on the farm, and each and every one. But it's important for all of us, for all the consumers also to get involved. Look at the brands that's supporting soil regenerative practices, climate practices, and support those brands. And for each and every consumer, all the time there's a little piece of land available, whether it's in your garden. Start an organic vegetable garden. And it's so simple. I mean, by just using organic material, food waste that's in the house where it's possible. I'm not saying it's possible all over, but I think start with that. We've also intervened with one school in Soweto, and that's also where they've got a big area available, and start supporting their vegetable gardens and also for the children to learn. I think all of this is collaborate with like-minded people to save our planet and driving the future of our livelihoods.
Well, certainly. Thank you so much there for your time, Mr. Hoven Meyer from Nestlé Agriculture Services, East and Southern African region, speaking to us there on the back of World Soil Day. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.